A couple of Marvel things to go over. The biggest news of the day is Marvel's Antman and the Wasp Quantumania first reactions. And they're actually mixed, which is somewhat strange because usually first reactions are all glowing, and that's not happening this time. I don't know if this movie is going to be good or bad. All I can say is based on the Phase 4 stuff that I've watched, I'm going to go into this movie with very, very low expectations. So there's this, and then there's the Midnight Sun stuff. Turns out that game didn't do very well financially, so we're going to go over that. I want to just touch on these. So here's what people are saying. Eric Davis says, in a very hyperbolic way, Phase 5 has begun. The new Ant-Man movie is like a psychedelic roller coaster full of frightening and hilarious oddities, plus one very menacing Kang. Big Star Wars vibes meet the MCU at its freakiest and most inventive. MODOK is a riot, but Jonathan Majors conquers. Loved the ride. It's funny, Ant-Man's actually front and center in his poster. I like that. Remember, like, the Doctor Strange poster? He was, like, in the villain's position, and they always had Wanda front and center. What is this? The hero of the movie should be front and center. But it was more of a Wanda movie than it was a Doctor Strange movie. Here's another one. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is the best of the trilogy. Higher stakes, dangers, and repercussions. It's also got one of the best MCU villains in Kang. As soon as Jonathan Majors comes in, it's his show. King is a very scary, lean, mean, multiverse, big baddie. Also, two cool post-credit scenes. It's always about the post-credits. Go see it for the post-credits. Here's the next one from Brian Davids. There comes a point where every franchise has to get weird, and the MCU has done just that with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Like all his other roles, Jonathan Majors remains endlessly compelling. So it's Marvel's weirdest movie yet. I don't know how you can say, like, Ant-Man movies aren't weird. But a guy who fought, remember in the first one, he fought on, like, a train track? A toy train track? That's not weird. I don't know about this movie. These first reactions are always so shilly. But then you see some of the bad ones, which is what makes this interesting. Because usually you don't see any. I do like that he's front and center on his own stuff. That was not the case before. But let's go over some of these bad reactions. After a frustratingly rough Act 1, Ant-Man 3 finally gets going, only to end where the story should have began. While the external stakes are clear and weighty, emotional drive felt slight. That said, Jonathan Majors rules. I like him a lot better in the trailers for this than I did in Loki. They seem like they're totally different characters, which I think is good, especially for Kang. I think that works. It does seem that this guy has some range. So I think he might end up being a good Kang. We'll see. But that doesn't say much for, like, Marvel itself. You still need to make good movies because they're not going to get to finishing him off until, 15 movies down the road if it's like before? I will say, though, there is one cutaway shot in Ant-Man 3 that spoke directly to me and probably me alone. It's supposed to this big ticket thing and a small ticket. My son changed his mind at the last minute and skipped seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania tonight. He sadly had the right idea. This is from Scott Mendelson, too. Scott Mendelson is a gigantic shill, especially for Disney. This guy would jump in front of a car for Mickey Mouse, and he's calling this movie shit. Does anyone know what his first reactions for Black Adam, Doc Strange 2, and Thor 4 were? A lot of people saying this must be good then, because the trend now is to hate on Marvel movies and get more clicks with those juicy headlines. And he says, I don't review movies anymore. You might be in real trouble when even your biggest simps are like, I couldn't enjoy this as a standalone movie. He's posting the Matt Ramos says, Antman and the Wasp, Quantumania is truly episode 1 of what is sure to be a crazy cinematic series. You have to enjoy this movie more as an episode of something greater rather than its own standalone film that concludes a trilogy. See, that's so stupid. No, Stan Lee, you can go with what Stan Lee said. Stan Lee said, everybody's comic is their first comic. You should be able to just enjoy that comic. I shouldn't need to think of this, go in and think, wow, that was disappointing, but it's part of a larger trilogy, or it's part of a larger phase. I should be able to just enjoy this movie as is. I shouldn't need to say, oh, well, there's going to be other movies. And Scott Mendelson says, here's what's nuts. Not only is it perhaps Marvel's dullest, most generic film, but it's totally skippable from a mythology episode. Point of view 2. No spoilers, but if you saw the last episode of Loki, you'll be fine. Like, that's not encouraging. So really, this film is just part of nothing then? I don't quite see the appeal here. But I'm sure it's going to do fine. What does it matter? People are going to flock to see this movie. It'll probably make $1 billion. Then there's this. Marvel's Midnight Suns bombs. It's a commercial flop. So this movie was interesting. Or not this movie. This game was interesting because critically it did very well. Critics loved this game. As you can see from the Metacritic score, it's sitting at 82 for PS5, 81 for Xbox, and 83 for the PC release. User scores, though, 5.6, 7.1 for PS5, and then 8.0 for Xbox. So it seems audiences were a little bit more mixed on it, but here's the thing when it comes to this game. I think a lot of people bought it and didn't know what it was. I skipped it because it's a card game, and it's based on getting random cards and stuff. That's just not my kind of game. Some people probably are into that. It's a tactical RPG and it uses cards for the combat. I'm not into that. If it had been a tactical RPG, like an XCOM, I probably would have picked this up. However, that's a very niche genre. Let's be real. Tactical RPG. That's not something that most people just jump up and down to get a hold of. And I think that was this game's biggest problem, is that it wasn't something that would appeal to the masses. Also, it focused on a lot of characters, like having Captain Marvel here front and center are not good for you. You want to put like Spider-Man front and center, or Doctor Strange, or Ghost Rider. But anyway, here's what a reporter from Bloomberg tweeted. He spoke to Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick, who noted Marvel's Midnight Suns was a critical success, but a commercial flop. It's possible the release window wasn't perfect. He added that he thinks that the game could be successful in the long run because they're going to release it for PS4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch over time. As of right now, it's only available on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S, which are the more expensive gaming outlets right now. The older ones, it's not available for, but it is coming, so it could improve over time. But it's still a commercial flop, and it's another commercial video game flop for Marvel. As this article points out, what's interesting is that the only real big success they've had in a long time, video game-wise, are the Spider-Man games. Those two new ones, the Marvel's Spider-Man and Miles Morales Spider-Man, are pretty successful. But outside of that, they have had a lot of flops. Marvel isn't really known for putting out great video game content. And I think that kind of works against them with games like this. Because like I said, from what I've heard, this is a fun game. However, it's not a game that I want to play. Maybe things will change. They got that Wolverine game coming out. This Guardians of the Galaxy game, well, no, okay, this is a rumor, but they have a Guardians of the Galaxy game that came out like 2 years ago. That game was really good as well, but guess what? It was a flop. It didn't make that much money. So I don't know. They have a lot of success in the movies, but for some reason, Marvel video games don't do that well. They need to, they're trying to redo that and fix that up. I think that their stuff that they have with Spider-Man is really good. I think that Wolverine game, which I suppose it's supposedly going to be like a very graphic adult game. That's how you need to do that game too, by the way. So we'll see what happens, but another flop for Marvel. Will Antman flop? I guess that's the real question. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Also, if you would, please like, subscribe, share the video. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that notification bell. Check out my locals and Rumble, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Make sure to check out my locals. There's a link in the description. It's a fun community that I'm trying to build over here. If you don't want to support me on YouTube, you can come over here. None of that money goes to YouTube. You also can just come over here for free. But if you are a supporter over here, I do plan on doing an extra live stream once a month and throwing links to the supporters so you can actually come on and have a supporter live stream with me. Also, it's a good place to catch all of my content. You don't have to worry about notifications like YouTube. They'll definitely work over here. So come check out my locals.